Hello, my name is Troy Adu here,
I'm Tyler Hoskins.
and you're listening to our Sick Ass Podcast. Kia ora, and welcome back to this guest episode of the Sick Ass Podcast. Today's guest, he is someone who is going for the tippity top, I guess, if you think of anything in terms of sport. Believe it or not, this is also the young man that actually helped me get into running. I know all of you who are listening to this and look at me and remember that I used to always say I hated running. There is no way you could get me to run. This is actually the young man that I approached so that he could help me with doing that. And he ended up having me doing about 3 sessions per week, and he kept me safe over that time. So today's guest, Mr. Oli Chignell, thank you so much for coming on, brother.
Hey bro, happy to be here.
All right, so I guess when I talked about you coming on here, a lot of people are quite interested in, how it is that you turn something that most people really wouldn't want to do, which is a whole lot of long distance running. But if you did see this guy, he pretty much floats. So if you go over to his Instagram, just at Oli Chignell, he has a few videos on there, and you can see this boy absolutely floats. So we'll get to how it is you get to that point of running. So if you want to give us a little bit of a background, just your upbringing, and then where running kind of fits in with your life, we'll go from there.
Yeah, so pretty much, I'm pretty much Dunedin born and bred. I was born in Nelson. Dad's side of the family's from Nelson, but I moved down here sort of 3 months into my life. I'd started playing football when I was about 5, and then 6, just got really interested in the whole running aspect of it, and just thought I might give it a try. So went down to my local club, which was Hill City, now Hill City University, and just started running from 6, and
awesome, man.
Haven't stopped, eh?
Right. Is your family quite involved with the running scene, or did you just kind of go for it yourself?
Yeah, so mum, when I was a bit younger, she was doing events like she'd do the Mora Marathon, the Hill Free Half out in Outram and that kind of thing. She also started doing things like the 3 Peaks. Right. And Dad, he was always quite interested in the sprinting side, so Mum would do the longer stuff, right, and Dad would do the sprinting and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then where do you fit in now with
I'm
the
pretty
scene?
much like the perfect middle ground. I like to say I'm the only sane, I'm the most sane one. I picked something that's slightly more in the middle, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and did you find that over time, so being from a 6-year-old, kind of getting into the club stuff and then actually doing more and more, you started finding, striking a balance of where it is you wanted to sit, or have you found that that's actually been an evolving process?
I think definitely an evolving process. When I was younger, I always wanted to be a discus thrower. Yeah, always wanted to be a discus thrower, and so, I'd practice throwing the discus all the time, and then I realised that probably wasn't going to be the best event for me. Sure. Just judging by how small I was, and yeah, so I did just gradually evolved. I started quite enjoying the 400 and 800 metre runs, and then got into 1500 metres. So when you're 10, that's when you can start doing 800 and 1500 metres. And then I started racing at senior athletics, which I think I started at 12. Most people start at 14 or 15, but I started at 12, and so I started doing 1500s, 3000s, really enjoyed that. And funnily enough, actually, I ran my first 10K when I was 9. Right. We had to get some special consideration there for me to, because it wasn't particularly normal for a 9-year-old to run a 10K. Absolutely. Yeah, but it did all right, actually. I think I ran something like 48 minutes, got 26th in open men's or something.
Holy moly. And that's, so you're actually being out there, and I guess when it comes to competing stuff, there's almost like a different level of mindset that you have to be in to compete. Like, anyone can put a training time out there, but to actually be out there and be exposed quite early, do you think being on the stage with people older than you has helped you quite a bit with your evolution? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, when I first jumped onto the scene, especially the long races, I was running against 35, 40-year-olds, right, so I was a similar ability to them. And it is just an evolving process, and you just gradually move up. But it's the kind of thing that does help. And the more competition you do, the better you're going to be able to perform on those big stages. Yeah. So just having competition after competition after competition, it just makes you a wee bit battle hardened, to be honest.
For sure.
And then, I mean, like you say, it's all good and well, going out, putting really good training times out there, but when you're in a race surrounded by 10 people and you're stuck right on the rail, and you've got people all around you, it's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when you are in training, the best you get are your training partners sometimes. Yeah. Have you had access to really good training partners, or mostly by yourself?
Mostly by myself. A couple of years ago, we actually had a really good training group down here. There were about 5 or 6 of us who were all really solid 5 and 10K guys. And so we worked together really well that year. But unfortunately, I think one of them ended up going back up to Hamilton, another two to Christchurch, another one started working a bit more, and so it was just one of those things. So predominantly, it's by myself, but I'm gradually managing to work people into training where I can.
Nice.
Yeah.
And the Dunedin scene in terms of that, so it sounds like we're quite spread in terms of talent and people who can help you keep progressing. Is that the case?
Yeah, it is. The talent's definitely spread quite all over the place when it comes to New Zealand, and I think Dunedin definitely. It hasn't really been able to hold a whole lot of really good people, which is a shame because I always say the Dunedin running is awesome. You've got so much right at your doorstep because it's a smaller city as well.
Absolutely.
And it's so much easier to, be able to go out and run in a variety of different spots. Whereas in Christchurch, even somewhere like Christchurch, half an hour drive to get to some trails or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of competition, when was the first comp that you did? So obviously there's a few smaller ones that you do as like the process goes, but then you get to one and you do really well at it, and then you realize like I can really have a good go at this. Do you remember that moment?
I do actually, yeah. There was one, it seems like really young, but they had this triangular tournament between Otago, Canterbury, and I think it was Tasman. I can't remember, it's so long ago now, but the longest event there was 1500 metre, and I won both the 1500 metre and 800 metre there, and I think I was 11, and I beat some guys who, they were already so much bigger than me. You've got to realise I didn't start growing till I was about 15 or 16. So it was beating some really good guys who were a lot bigger than me. And so I realised that I'd been able to kind of get to that level just with, some talent and a bit of work.
Sure.
And, I didn't need brute strength, didn't need, amazing genetics or anything, just...
Yeah. And then after that point, like, did you have a coach leading into that, or when did the coaches and stuff come into it?
Yeah, so I did have a coach when I was about 10. I had a coach, Jim Beers, who was he was a pretty hard ass coach, and yeah, so I was with him, and he actually had a huge group at that time. So I think at one point, me and all three of my siblings, we were training with him. But I think that just sort of, I can't remember exactly how it ended, but it sort of faded out. And then when I was about 12, I moved to my coach who I spent the longest time with. So I was with him from 12 until I think 19. Yeah, so about a 7-year stint.
Yeah. And how did you find having a coach was, because there's a lot of people who do kind of go through things and they kind of pick it up as they're going by themselves, but you've had a coach pretty much in your entire career when you thought like we're about to get serious. Have you found that it was helpful for you? Definitely,
yeah. And I think because I started running so early, I picked up on things. I was always the kind of person who was asking a whole lot of questions about why you do this, why you do that, and having a coach to answer those questions was really, really helpful.
Sure.
And I think that's really helped me in my own training, especially now. The coach that I have is based in Auckland, so he's not down seeing me 3 or 4 times a week. So it's the kind of thing that you've got to be quite streetwise about your training, and having all of that knowledge built up over so many years is just super, super beneficial.
Sure. And having all of that kind of build up over years, have you found that you're a lot more in touch with how your body's meant to feel, how stride is meant to go, and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. And definitely, you know what your body should feel like, how you should be moving, if you've got a really solid session or a really hard run, at what point you should be feeling certain things,
right? And
it definitely makes you feel a bit more in touch with what's going on.
Yeah, and has there been ever a training session or maybe a training month or a block where you just really feel like you couldn't quite crack where you were meant to be, and then maybe there was something that was kind of off, and how is it that you dealt with that sort of thing?
I think for the most part, I've actually the way that I've trained has always been relatively subdued compared to a lot of other people. A lot of people, they'll do a lot of anaerobic work, several track sessions a week, whereas I've sort of been the opposite. Yeah. But I know when I was right on the brink of moving from my previous coach to my new coach, I was just I felt like I was sort of stuck in a bit of a rut, right. And it was a bit of a tricky time at the time as well, because I'd just moved. I was just figuring out, what I was going to do with my studies and stuff, because I was just leaving Otago Uni, and I just wasn't too sure what was going on. So there were definitely a few things that were going on there. But yeah, it was just, you do just find yourself in a bit of a rut. And when I raced at Nationals that year, I had a couple of really good performances, which I just thought, I don't know where they've come from.
Right.
Don't know where they've come from. So it was a bit of a fluke, to me, to be honest. And so I kind of viewed that as, okay, if I'm saying that as a fluke, it'd be nice to actually know that I've had the work and go in with the confidence that I can race like that.
Yeah, so being able to replicate it and then like, yes, I can do that.
Yeah.
And these are the things that I can do to actually get me to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Just in terms of, so we've talked about competing quite a bit. And what are your most fun races? I know people will hear this and be like, racing fun, running fun. Yeah. But like, what are the ones that you're just like, yes, I've got one of these coming up?
There's so many for so many different reasons. I think, coming into any race, anyone who says they're not nervous for a race or an event is just lying.
Yep.
Because you've got to, because I mean, if you're nervous, you learn to use those nerves to your advantage.
Sure.
And you've got to be nervous before a race. I think the ones that it's gonna be a tough race. You're gonna be put on the hurt box, but that you've got a better than 50% chance of taking the win.
Sure.
Then it's fun going into it, because all right, if all I've got to do is just stick onto the back of this guy and then just peel him off in the last 150, then yeah.
When did you realize that your mind actually played a lot more in this game than you thought?
Probably when I started to get into the secondary school scene, because when you're younger, you have so many people, everyone's just going around asking everyone what their PBs are, how fast you run, and you've got some prick who's saying, oh yeah, I ran a 10k in 24 minutes the other weekend when he was 11, and it's like, no, you didn't. But yeah, so it's, people would just go around and they'd just start talking about their times, and they were realistic times. And, you can get to the start line and you're thinking about everyone else, but you're not thinking about yourself. And I went through quite a long period of, I was trying to, before a race, I'd block everyone out, wouldn't talk to anyone. On the day of the race, I'd have really loud music on and get really fizzed up. And that nervous energy I was talking about, by the time you get to the start line, you spend.
Right.
Because all you're doing is, because you've spent so long thinking about everyone else in the lead up to the race, and then on the day of the race, all you're thinking about is, right, I'm just going to go out there and effectively kill someone. And you're just exhausted by the end of it, because it's an exhausting process. So it's just, for me, it's just all been about keeping those top 2 inches just really nice and mellow.
Awesome.
You know that you've got a race coming up. You can just keep on working towards it, and then on race day, just relax as possible and just use those nerves as best you can. 1 hour to the race, you're going to be bricking it a wee bit, but
So comparing where you were then to now, what's your overall demeanor? I know you talked about being a bit more mellow, but what are some things that you've changed in your lead up, just within those hours preceding the start?
I think definitely with having the coach that I have now. He's helped me a lot with, the sessions that I'll do in the lead up, a couple of weeks out. He'll be able to tell me sort of what kind of shape I'm in. And he's had a lot of experience with a lot of really good athletes. So it sort of just puts my mind at ease knowing, okay, well, I'm in better shape than all these guys. Sure. So there's no reason for me to go in, with a bag of nerves to be, really, be really worried about the race. And yeah, so I think that's definitely been one of the big things that has helped. And one of the other things is just, there really is just no point just building yourself up. It's kind of like, I always say to people after an exam, people come out of the exam, they're worrying about the answers and stuff, and it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
You can't do anything to change it now.
Exactly.
And it's sort of like the opposite with a race, you're worrying about the race and stuff, and it's just like, well, just wait until it happens, wait until you're on the start line, and then go, right,
absolutely.
let's go.
Yeah, I always used to say that with exams as well. People would get to the exam and they'd be more worried about what's going to be in the exam rather than just like worried just because you're there. Like they're so worried, like, oh, I wonder if the question will be this. And I was like, we can't predict that.
Yeah.
All you can do is know how good you are before going into it. And then when you get it, that's when you start to deal with it.
And all you can do is know what you know.
Absolutely.
And go in. There's no point.
And so that's you with knowing how good you are, what your strategy is,
100%.
and then just sticking to that. So I know when it comes to long distance strategy, like you've probably got something in your head. Have you ever just like thrown it out and just been like, no, here's it? Or are you pretty good at sticking to what your guns are?
Yeah, pretty good at sticking to what my guns are. You know, myself and my coach will have a pretty good plan, sort of like a week out as to what we think will happen. Good thing about doing it a week out is you've got your plan. You know, each night when you're going to sleep, you can just kind of think it over a couple of times and then.
That's so cool.
You're off.
Yeah, so you got some good visualization.
Yeah.
And then when it's happening, you're like, it's happening. That's what's meant to happen.
Yeah. A good thing about a track as well. I mean, a track's, you're not going to get a whole lot of variety with a track. It's an oval. It's 400 meters all the way around.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Oh no, that's awesome, man. And just now you talked about hurt, and when you're in sessions, and a lot of the people that I've had on here, they've pretty much got to where they are because they know they're all good. Everyone who lines up with what they're doing is about as good as each other physically. But what separated them is the fact that they had like a mindset that just said, "Don't stop." Where do you think yours comes in, and where do you think you have that kind of differencing point from other people in terms of mentality and mindset? Yeah,
so I mean, if you're looking at New Zealand wide runners, but then also if you're looking at pro runners and stuff, all of the the majority of the guys in those top races, they're all together until about 200 meters to go.
Sure.
And that's where, like you say, everyone's pretty much the same. They've all been doing pretty much the same training. There's obviously going to be variations, but they're pretty much the same on the inside. And so so much of it just comes down to top 2 inches. I think that a lot of it is it's almost important to know to not know where your limit is. So if you're pushing your absolute limit in training every single day, then you know where your limit is. So you know that once you've reached that point, right, you can't go any further. Yeah. So and so like when I'm doing my training, I'm never I'm never curled over on the side of the track vomiting because for me I don't get any benefit out of that kind of training. Sure. And so I think it's good to know sort of where about your limit is. If you're trying to run a 5K in 13 and a half minutes, you're not going to go out on pace to run a 12 and a half minute because that's going to be unrealistic and you're going to blow out. Yeah. So it's about knowing those limits, but then also not wanting to push that really upper limit until you wait till race day. That's such an interesting thing you say, because a lot of people who they train super, super, super hard and then they suck in competition. Yeah. Like, okay, I won't name any names obviously, but they're the types of people who just you're for sure, shoo-in. Like they train so hard, but they kind of, because it's almost like you said, where they know when they've hit that, or when they're about to hit that end point, and then they start to kind of back up a little bit. Whereas that you're gonna have that little bit of extra in you because you're like, I've trained for this, but I'm going to be prepared for that moment as well. And because you don't know where it is, you can just keep on going. Yeah. Just keep on going. But I mean, so many people, and I know a lot of people, again, won't name names, who put all of their best races out into their training. They go and spit out the most ridiculous sessions. You'll see them chucking up on Strava and Instagram and stuff, and it's like, that's awesome, but go and put it out in the race in 2 weeks' time. Yep. And then they don't. Yeah. So in comparison from your training to when you do step out onto the competition, do you feel like now, I mean, you're going to have a little bit of those nerves, but do you feel like now you're a bit of a seasoned vet, even though you're quite young? Yeah. But you've done it so often now that you're at that point where you can kind of go through that motion, or do you think you're still bringing? Yeah, I mean, you learn things, you learn new things every time, and I think I've only just recently made the step up to sort of international level competition and that kind of thing, and competing for your country and that kind of thing. and you learn new things. You know, the bigger the event, the longer before that you have to warm up. There's a whole lot of there's a whole lot of different entry points. You've got different call rooms and that kind of thing. Like before, I think at like World Champs and Olympics, they have 3 separate call rooms, which is just, it seems completely diabolical, but that's just how they have to run things. So
that's always something that's quite interesting, where a lot of people will train. They'll train the event or like the sport, but they don't actually train everything that goes on around it. So like they get thrown off their warm-up routine because they didn't realize that when you're warming up, you don't actually have this equipment and that equipment. So I mean, how did you figure out what was the best way to start getting all that ready, like just for your own mindset and to get some sort of routine going?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I see a lot of people who, they'll have like all their superstitions and, like all their routines and stuff. And I think the biggest thing, like I'm not a big guy on like routine. Like I don't have to set out my my like singlet and put my number on the night before and that kind of thing. But I think the main thing that I do is I just always give myself heaps of time. And I like to turn up to events, I'll turn up an hour and a half, 2 hours before my race, and I'll turn up, find some people to chat to, go sit down on a grassy bank or something.
Nice.
Just, have a bit of a lie down, then you chuck your number on, you can chuck a transponder in your shoe or something. And, you're already ready, you know that you've got all your stuff. I always say, as long as I've got my shorts, singlet and spikes, then I'm fine. And you double check that. In your bag, you're
That's
fine.
awesome, man. And it's just trying to make everything as basic as possible, because if you know that this is what I go through, these are the things that I can do. If anything comes at me, but I have these things, and it's not like an exhaustive list, then you're going to be fine. And that just makes, it's almost like a lot of people think they need more to feel more prepared, but you're just like, no, I'm so good at what I do. I have the bare necessities. We're good to rock.
And I mean, for like when you're training, as hard as middle and long distance runners do, the hardest, training's so much harder than racing. So you get to racing and that's the easy bit, the weeks and weeks of Ks and like hard work and just being in pain, that's behind you. So there's no point making that race day super, super complicated.
Yeah, this is the fun part. This is where you get to show everything.
Yeah, exactly. You get to showcase exactly what you've been working towards.
So let's talk a little bit about the training side of things, and what it looks like now, and then we can kind of get into where we're going in the future. So how does your training look like at the moment?
So at the moment, I'm gradually building up. So I had national cross country about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, and that went all right. The build up to that I'd had been a wee bit sort of up and down. So at the moment now we're just building up towards this the summer season, the track season, just gradually building up the Ks. So this week, hopefully looking at about 130k, 9.5 hours of running or so. Chuck a gym session in there tomorrow as well on long run day. And
So, I mean, that's a lot of time that you're out and about, and you seem to have a really quite relaxed feel about everything. Everything is just like, yep, we know what to do, and we're going to get out and do it. And now you're out you're out in nature quite a bit. Do you feel like you think quite a bit?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it's an awesome opportunity just to go out and get away from everything. It's one of the things that I hate about cross training, and I need a lot of motivation to go to the gym. But I don't need a motivation to go out and do a 2-hour run, because going out and doing a 2-hour run, you can sort out your whole week. If you go out on Sunday, you can sort out exactly what you can do for the entire week. But if you're in the gym, you've got music in your own headphones as well. You've got heaps of other people banging weights, doing that kind of thing. If you're on a stationary bike, there's just so much going on, and it's just so much nicer just to get out and
So when you do get out and about, I mean, we won't get too much into your mind, but what are the types of things, like, if you say, we'll talk about mood for a second. If you were like angry before you went out, it's probably impossible to stay angry for 2 hours. How long are you usually out for?
I mean, obviously big range. I'd say, on average, you're looking at between 45 minutes to an hour. But, you've got lower range going to be half an hour, upper range is going to be, 2.25, 2.5.
Yeah, but still, you're not going to be, like, whatever you were feeling on your way out, like, you will feel relaxed by the time.
Exactly, yeah. And it's, again, it's a good opportunity just to, just get away from everything. You know, if something's pissing you off, you know, chuck your shoes on, go for a run, and you really are like you're not just getting away from it, you're getting away from it. You know, it's not like you're running away, but you know, you're getting away from it.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so cool, and I think just any chance really to explore nature, whether that's a walk or like whether you do get into running or not, just being able to take yourself somewhere else, without where people aren't, because you said it's quite quiet, right, when you get out there. Yeah, that's awesome. So you were talking about study. So you did do a little bit of study here at the University of Otago, and that's actually where I think I first met you, was that you did, so you were first year in my beloved degree, which I love. You're a feta for a bit. And you're like, that just didn't work for you, and that's fine. But so talk us through, you know, where you realised like maybe this isn't for me, and now what your plans are in terms of study.
Yeah, to be quite honest, it was only one thing that was shit grades. You know, and it was I felt like I was applying myself enough, but it just wasn't clicking, and it wasn't the right thing. And I think it takes, you know, it's a big decision to, you know, to decide, okay, well, I'm just gonna not study. I'm gonna wait, and I'm gonna find out, you know, what's gonna be right for me. I wasn't sure how long it would take. You know, it could have taken half a year. I think at the end it took, you know, 2.5 years. For me to figure out. But you know, I did a wee bit of stuff in between there. You know, I worked for a couple of years. Obviously, did a lot of running. Got a European summer season trip in there and that kind of thing. And you know, did a wee bit of traveling with my girlfriend as well. And you know, it's just it was just one of those things that it didn't click for me straight away. But now you know, I'm at Massey, and and it's a new degree, and it's going really well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you bring up really, really good points that I think a lot of people need to hear, is that, you know, sometimes things don't work out. And you know, being happy with the fact that, okay, well, at least I found out that that didn't work for me, and I can go look to do other things. Your Massey stuff, what are you studying there?
So I'm doing management there at the moment. So that's just part-time study, and I'm doing it through Massey mainly just because if I'm going away travelling for races and that kind of thing, you know, you can do that on the other side of the world, because it's all just online. All you need is an internet connection and a computer. And
it's going well for you so far, I've heard.
Yeah, going pretty well. Got an A in my first assignment, so that's way better than any of the results that I got. And I think apart from my dance performance in first year PE, which was that was the highlight of the PE degree.
That's cool, man. So I mean, that's being able to highlight weaknesses, not really weaknesses, but what doesn't really work for you. So in terms of your training and in terms of your mentality and then getting ready for comp, have you found that there have been any like maybe physiological things, physical things, or mental things that you've seen as like these could be the parts that like pull me back a little bit?
I think mentally, definitely no. I think that's something that just over, you know, the years, it's been, you know, over 15 years of just doing running, that you just, like, you just go in as like a veteran. You battle hardened, and, you know, you're always good to go. I think physically, something that I've been working on over the past couple of months is just, you know, constant, you know, physio work, also working with a dietitian as well, and it's just, you know, just building up those pillars just to make sure that you're a really solid athlete. And I mean, with things like diet and physio, you know, they can just be 1 or 2 percenters, but when you get to the stage, you know, where you're running that quick, it's just all about the 1 percenters, and you're just building that up so you can be a 110% athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people who, well, I'm saying all of those things are definitely important, but there's a lot of people who haven't built up the 99% before they start focusing on those really, really minute details, which is the stage that you're at. And on top of that, so you're doing a lot of the work that actually helps you become a better athlete. I know a lot of people think that you just need to train more to be a better athlete, but you actually got a little bit smarter, and you're having to reel yourself back a little bit. Yeah,
and I mean, like, you can train for 2-3 hours a day every day, but the other, you know, 21, 22 hours are just as important. You know, you're getting in that rest, you're fueling properly, you know, you're seeing your physio to, you know, to work through any problems that you've got. And it's just staying on top of those things. It's prevention before anything happens.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, you actually did have something happen towards the end of 2019. So if you want to get into that, and then that'll bring us to where we are now.
Yeah, so pretty much I picked up a stress fracture in my sacrum. I'd done a pretty good job of it as well, actually. There were a couple of small hot spots which had essentially just it had created a full crack
Right
and sort of like it's right through the bottom of the sacrum. The difficult thing with that was though, I was sort of in between physios and being looked at by different people, and so I got injured at the start of December, and I didn't get my MRI for the stress fracture until start of January, so it was about 6 weeks afterwards.
Damn.
So that's halfway through the bone healing process. So that was a really, really tough 6 weeks. I think I tried to do like a week of running or something, but it just didn't work.
Yeah.
No, it just wasn't going well. And so I got misdiagnosed a couple of times. People said that I'm 99% sure that it's not a stress fracture, and and so that was pretty difficult. But it was a massive. It was actually a relief. Once I got the MRI and went to go look at the results, and I saw my mate who he was going through the results with me, and he said, yeah, it's definitely a stress fracture. Like you've done a fucking good job of it. And I was like, okay, it's just massive weight lift off of my shoulders, because there were so many people were saying like, okay, well, it might be a stress fracture, but otherwise I've got no idea what it is. And, if you don't know what it is, then that's just more weighting. And
because now you have this is actually what we're treating now. And this is why I can't do these things. Like, you actually have a reason for it, not
But the good thing was we'd been kind of managing it like a stress fracture, because we knew
you were onto it.
Because we knew that like the management of the injury, it was going to be pretty similar no matter what it was, and because we knew that doing stuff with impacts that was hurting, kicking while swimming was hurting, aqua jogging was hurting, so it was just, we started me off, I was on like a spin bike doing about 160 RPM, but just with no resistance at all, which was pretty tough, because after 2-3 weeks you've just lost so much fitness because you can't do any stuff. But it actually definitely taught me a lot about sort of mental resilience and that kind of thing. And you've got to, when you've got a big injury like that, it's just be so easy just to pull the pin. But not at one point was I thinking, no, I'm gonna pull out of this, because after that happens, after you've got to overcome some adversity in your career. You've got to try and get past a couple of things. And so that was the first, really big hurdle that I'd had. And I mean, this year obviously hasn't been perfect with COVID and that kind of thing. I had races cut out, and then it was all just pretty bumpy in the lead up pretty much until now. But it looks like we're on the right track now. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with the injury stuff, you just said so many different things that I was just like, man, that's big. Because I know if someone had like that, because that's not just like a small injury, like that's quite central to a lot of everything that you do in terms of you being a runner. And one of the adversities is obviously the fact that you can't really do what it is you feel like you're meant to do. And what were the kinds of things that you did to not only mentally get you there, but also physically help you get back into the groove of things? Because I think the first thing people want to do in return to play is almost return to where they were prior to injury. So how did you slowly build yourself back up?
Yeah, so like I say, I was doing a lot of cross training. It started off just on the bike, and that was all I could do. And with the stress fracture, because the sacrum because it's just always being loaded all the time, using pain or discomfort as a threshold was really good. So if it was painful or uncomfortable, stop. So, if I was biking for too long, stop. And then once I got into other stuff, started to be able to do a bit of swimming, some really slow aqua jogging, and then using like the elliptical machine. And then, that just started off at 5 minutes, and you could just gradually build that up. And then once I think it was probably when I was about 7 weeks or so. So it was just after I'd had the MRI, and we'd seen that there was a lot of white material sort of around the bone of the MRI. So we knew that it was healing, and it was healing pretty well, and healing pretty quickly. So we started to, we'd been working on, I always do quite a lot of sort of single leg stuff and body weight exercises. So I just worked on doing so much of that just every day, just strengthening, just getting the frame like so good. So that once I came back, it wasn't going to be that much of a shock. Granted, I mean, when you haven't been running for 12 weeks and then trying to get back into running.
Yeah.
But no, and then once I got back into running, like just the frame that I was working with was just so strong and solid that it was awesome. So I got straight into, I think, first run was I did 15 minutes and then next run I did 20 minutes the next day. And then, so I was doing 2 days 2 days running, 2 days like cross training, 2 days running, 2 days, and then I'd go 3 days, 2 days, and then 3 days, 2 days, and then I'd go 4 days, 3 days, and so it was a long process, long process getting back. But it was definitely working on the frame that I was, working on the frame that I was actually, going to be running with. Was a massive thing.
That's what I always try to tell people who go through injury is that we can use this time where you're going to be off your main stuff to work on some of the things that weren't so strong in that time, so that when you do come back, you're everything's slightly better. You've had a minor upgrade, and now we just need to get your conditioning back up to speed. And it's almost like the processes that you go through are so necessary, because I think a lot of people really try to throw it out the window. They're I'm feeling good, but you were patient through it. And I mean, how did you, is it because you knew it was going to be good for you, or how did you actually stay so disciplined? Because it's so hard.
It was. It was a shit time. It was rough, not being, I think it ended up being 11 weeks, 11 weeks between runs. And so, that whole time was really rubbish. Like I say, I was, I need a lot of motivation to go into the gym and get into the gym. And so, trying to get into the gym and doing that kind of stuff, it really was just, it sucked. And I think what was really annoying over the summer as well is, you saw, you did see not so much New Zealand athletes, but then you were seeing so many people overseas who were running so well, and people running times, and because I love seeing other people, my mates from New Zealand runners doing awesome, because it's just so good for New Zealand runners, and it's going to be good for me as well, because I'm going to get to race them. So it was awesome to see that, but then that was also motivating me to be like, okay, well, I just want to get back, and I thought, well, again, just being streetwise with the training and stuff, I know that if I'm trying to come back after 6 weeks, it's only going to end up worse. I'm only going to end up re-injuring myself.
That's cool. So you were patient, you trusted that this was all going to be worth it, and it was worth it.
Yeah, just trust the process,
And everything's feeling all good now?
Yeah, I'm all good now. Yes, ticking over pretty good now.
That's awesome. Did you find also, just when you got back into it with that new strength and that foundation, that you were a bit more aware of when you were running again, or did it kind of come back to you pretty easy?
No, it came back to me pretty easily. I think definitely, because I've been running for so long, my body's just built for running now, and so getting back into it, I was pretty unfit. The first run I did with a girlfriend, she was saying that's the first time I've ever heard you puff on a run.
Wow.
So I was unfit, but it gradually came back to me. The whole lockdown period was actually was almost quite good, because all I did was eat, sleep, train, repeat, and just gradually building up that kind of stuff.
That's awesome, man. And just speaking about lockdown and speaking about how the season has now had to change with all of that, and where your goals are. So the first hurdle is the fact that you're coming back from an injury, and then the second hurdle is the worldwide hurdle, where we can't travel, we're locked to where we are. So how has that actually affected what your goals were and where you think you could go going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, Tokyo 2020 this year was the main aim, and having the stress fracture at the end of last year looks like that was going to completely blow that out. But then as I was coming back, they decided to, they postponed Tokyo for a year. So Tokyo 2021 is now the aim. And so it's, for me now, it's just going to be about getting a whole lot of really good races in the domestic season, and then hopefully going overseas. One of the really good benefits with COVID is the athletes who are in New Zealand at the moment, a lot of them would usually be overseas, in America or Europe racing, which, I probably would be as well. But, you're never going to be in the same spot as each other. But no, now, I mean, in a very small country, where it only takes, an hour and a half here to get up to Auckland. It just makes things... It's going to make things really interesting. We're going to hopefully get some really good races.
Yeah, it'll make the competition season so much better. I know, with the rugby at the moment. So because of the NPC and because we don't have the All Blacks anymore, and they're all here in New Zealand, they're all playing for the local teams again, and it's like the competition just skyrocketed.
Yeah, it's like Kieran Reid was playing for like Manawatu or something. It's like the first game he'd played for them.
They're like playing, unreal. And it's just like they haven't been back to that level in so long, but because they have nowhere else to go, these are the competitions, and it just makes the overall competition better. Is there anyone you're looking forward to actually seeing and getting together with?
There's a guy, Matt Baxter. He runs as a professional in Flagstaff, Arizona, and he's just absolute workhorse, and he's run some really solid times over 5 and 10K, and I'm sort of hoping to run similar to those times or quicker, and having him as well as there's honestly just so many people, like you can't even name names, that are in New Zealand at the moment who are just going to be able to make the whole racing experience so good.
Man, that's awesome, man. That whole social thing is just so much bigger than a lot of people put into everything. Like your circles that you surround yourself with can either make you, like whatever they're good at, you'll slowly start to get better at it because of who you're surrounded by. And we were talking about social earlier, and I remember the first time I did meet you, you were very rigid. Like a lot of what you did was like, I'm an athlete, I don't do this, I don't do that, but you've changed and you actually had a different mentality about it now, so you just want to talk us through that? So I mean, like you say, I think rigid is definitely like a really good word for it. I was just, the way that I viewed it and the way that I thought that I should be based on how I'd seen other athletes portrayed, was it's eat, sleep, train, repeat. You can go and have fun with your mates, but like you don't go out, you don't stay out late, and just a whole mix of things. And while I was injured, actually, I started spending like a lot more time with my mates. I went up to Bay Dreams in Nelson, and that was awesome. I was meant to be like cross training through there, but I ended up just giving myself 5 or 6 days off, and like it was and I just gradually built up this realization that, okay, well, and it was when I was coming back into training as well, that okay, I can still I can still enjoy myself, I can still go and do all these things, and I think deep down I knew that I could, but it just didn't seem acceptable. And I think that a lot of people would also think that as well, because they think that there's an exact way that an athlete should be. Absolutely.
And how they should act, and what they should be doing. But I think that that's just built on sort of false claims, and it's a wee bit unfair. Athletes they're normal people too, and once you meet high profile athletes, you realise that they're just completely normal people too as well. If people. If athletes want to go out and get pissed, let them do it, and don't play them off as being a bad person for it.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of restrictive stuff that goes on that they're thinking about all the other things they could be doing, whereas if you just like go do it, you'll come back and you'll focus on training. Like training's all I'm focusing on. I'm doing all of this because I've had my like blowout on the weekend, or like I've been pretty balanced with the whole thing.
And it's like the kind of thing that it's also similar like with diet as well. I mean, if you're getting in all the stuff that you need, like the way that I see it is, you can have a wee bit on the side as well. If you're having 4 solid meals a day, but then you want to go out and get yourself a couple of magnums or something, then go and do it. And it's just
with the energy you're burning, you could probably
I need to. I need to. Dietitian was saying like you just keep on shoveling it in.
Does it ever? I mean, that's always what's fascinated me, because I remember like a lot of the people that you wouldn't see as like big eaters, but then they're just putting it away. You're like, where the heck does it go? Are you one of those people, or do you find it hard to get that in?
I can never have like huge meals, because I mean, like, where's it going to go? So I'm eating like 4 or 5 times a day. 4 or 5 sort of like medium-sized meals, which is it's just a way of just trying to like get it in. But it's one of the things that I've works on sort of recently is just getting into that routine of what you're eating, and a lot of the time you're eating 3 meals a day which are exactly the same every single day, but if you've got that, then I mean it's easy. You go shopping, you get everything that you need, and it's
so a nice little routine, and that's just what we're getting into, and that's your usual.
And so it's just about getting the calories in, really. I mean, because if you're burning 3,000 calories a day, and then you need another 2,500 to maintain weight. So, yeah,
Man, it must be hard.
yeah,
Especially because, there's some people who they need to because of the amount of energy that you are expending daily. Like, you do a lot of activity, and to actually just maintain what your physique is and your physiology as well, because it's easy to burn out once you get to a point of like, no, because I just don't want to eat. Like, have you ever actually found it hard to eat?
yeah,
100%.
I mean, like, you just, you get to one stage and you're just like, oh, I'm full. And, I'm not gonna, it's not like I'm not Jay Cutler or Ronnie Coleman. I don't have to have my 8th meal a day. Otherwise, like, it's not like I'm trying to maintain mass or anything, but it's just finding ways to try and make sure that you're eating enough, and if you're in like a deficit one day, then you can make it up like the next day and that kind of thing. And again, without trying to do that without being too rigid.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man. So you've striking a nice balance with like your social life, with your training life, and it seems like you're doing pretty well at it.
Yeah. It's just, I think balance is super key, and it's really easy just to go off and to not be balanced, and you think that it's fine, and I mean you might be able to carry on doing it for a while, but a lot of the time it's just really important to maintain that solid balance.
Yeah, because you're still a bloody good athlete, and then you're also just very happy with everything and how it's going.
Yeah,
it's cool. Enjoying the process. So just last two questions. The first one is, where do you see yourself? So obviously we've got one of the Olympics. Yeah. Depending on when it is, with how everything goes. You've got that in your sights. Then what else in terms of, say the border's open, we can start doing a thing. Yeah. Where do you want to see yourself in the next, couple of years?
Well, definitely. I mean, there's now so many, world champs and big events that you can go to. So you've got world outdoor champs, world indoor champs, world cross-country champs, Commonwealth Games and Olympics. So you've always got a big event every year. So essentially just trying to make it to as many of those as possible. Awesome. Just wanting to do my bit and represent and just, do the best that I can. Qualifying for one of those events, especially, qualifying for the Olympics is just a massive achievement in itself. But, I think definitely in the coming years, if you're thinking 4 years from now, if that's when the Olympics actually are, who knows? If you're thinking 4 years from now, then I'd like to be able to, be in a spot where I can do relatively well, and then 4 years from then maybe do even better.
Fantastic. And you'll just be changing over time. You'll see what it is that fits you at that time and whatnot, and that's awesome, man. And then the last one that we ask everyone is just, what is something that you do close to every single day that helps you feel like you have optimized your day and actually set you up for the rest of the...
Two things. Make your bed in the morning.
Oh, very good. Make
it nice and tidy.
Yep.
And then training diary at the end of the day.
Right.
Yeah. So I have actually used like Strava and that kind of thing. I mainly just use that for, like totaling your runs and that kind of thing.
Yep.
But I think just sitting down, in bed or just before you go to bed, and if you're going over your training diary and you just write down what you've done during the day, how it felt, and then you can just put it down, and then just ready for the next day.
Yeah, nice.
Good way to start, good way to finish.
Yeah, do you have a scoring system on that, or do you just literally just write how you feel?
Yeah, like I'll just have one page which will be like the week, and Monday I'll just write what my training is. Underneath it I'll write what I actually did, how long I ran for, how many Ks I did, how it felt. And super simple, it takes 30 seconds to do.
Yeah.
And it's just a good way, and then it means that you can look back. Like, I've got a training diary from when I first started with my coach now, and it's just interesting to look back and see what you were doing over those periods and stuff.
It's cool, and coaches love it too. Because they can actually see like what the heck's happening.
Yeah, it's just like, what have you done for training? Well, here's 3 of my diaries. Just have a wee look.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on today.
No problem. Absolute pleasure to be here. Absolutely.
Just appreciated all of the chat, and I know we've actually had quite a few meetings before this, and I know there's plenty that we haven't discussed. Yeah, so hopefully in the near future we can get you back on.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Take care, brother.
Love it.